Hey guys, so I just wanted to make a guide on the Necromancer build I've been running in the endgame as an alternative build to, I think there's a lot of coverage for the bone builds, and I think maybe after the patch some people are running the minion build, but I'm running a Shadow DOT build. It's a build without minions. It uses Corpse Explosion and Blight, and I think it's been working pretty well in the endgame. For overworld stuff, for on-level Nightmare Dungeons, and I've been running over-leveled Nightmare Dungeons with it as well, so I thought I'd share it. I initially wanted this to be quick, but I just decided to put everything in one video, so I'm going to put a run of a tier 35 dungeon at the end of the video as well. I'm going to go through the equipment, and then I'm going to do a Nightmare Dungeon run on tier 26 just to showcase the rotations, so you can see how it's played. But, so overall pros and cons of the build. I think the pros of this build is that it is mostly a mobbing focused build. You kill things really fast when they're in a large pack, so if you're fishing for nightmare dungeons or you want to do things at high density, this build is really good because things die really fast. If you can have a lot of trash mobs around an elite, it kills the elites really fast as well. It is also pretty good at surviving because this build makes use of Blood Mist and you can spam Blood Mist, and I like to do a lot of stupid things and play greedily and stupid, so I die a lot, which is why I made this build in the first place. It has decent CC as well, although it's kind of RNG, it's kind of lucky hit based, but you have a lot of slow with the build with Decrypt. And another benefit is you can troll everyone by making the entire screen black. I've been playing in a party and they said, they can't see anything on the screen when I use my build, and it's pretty funny. The cons of this build is that the single target damage can be a little lacking, especially if it's a really mobile enemy that jumps around a lot because they're jumping out of your DOT pools. It's slow, as in slow movement speed, but I think that's just a necro thing in general. You can get more movement speed on your items if you really wanted to farm fast, because the mobbing speed I think is quite quick, but you just travel from place to place kind of slow. And you also troll yourself a bit by making the entire screen black, because then you can't see things on the floors like traps and explosions and all that stuff, and I always die randomly to it. But yeah, that's the overall of the build, and time to get into it. For the helmet, I'm using Aspect of Explosive Mist. This basically allows you to use Blood Mist and trigger Corpse Explosion on any corpse, so you can just run through a pile of corpses and it'll drop pools on Miasma. You don't have to stand there manually casting it. The cooldown is nice as well. Whenever you use a corpse, you get 0.5 seconds back on your cooldown, so it'll help with spamming your Blood Mist, which is your immunity skill. As for the lines on the helmet, I do like cooldown reduction. It just helps with spamming your skills. And the other lines, you could get damage. I like the ranks of Decrepify because Decrepify is a good spell. For the armor, I'm using what I think is a pretty standard defensive aspect of Disobedience. It just makes you tankier when you deal damage. And you're running a DOT build, so you're always going to be dealing damage. I got a lot of lines of damage on this piece of armor, so I'm pretty happy with that. But you could go for damage, you could go for tankiness, whatever lines are good for you. As for the gloves, I am using the unique. I don't think it breaks the build if you don't have the unique, because for the longest time I was running this build without the unique anyway. But what this unique does is it helps mitigate some of the single target damage issues you have from this build, especially against mobile enemies, because they like to jump around and they're always jumping out of your pools on Miasma. What this does is it allows you to proc corpses from anywhere on the map, and they'll run to the boss and explode, or run to any enemies then explode. So it'll always create pools on Miasma under them. I'm not too sure about the lines yet. The lucky hit chance is nice, and you get a lot of kind of lucky hit CC with the lines. But if you don't have these gloves, you could always run, just find like a normal legendary or normal yellow with good lines, maybe lines that add levels to your skills, and you can imprint another aspect on it. I was running this aspect for a while. Maybe you could try something else as well, like repeated blood wave. That's pretty good. For the pants, I'm running Aspect of the Embalmer. I like the blood orbs that spawn from corpses when you consume them. You could run maybe another defensive aspect, but I've been running with this aspect and I like it because blood orbs just helps with a lot of lines and paragons and utility for necromancers. Like for example, this line gives you damage when you pick up a blood orb, so that's pretty nice. I got a lot of good defensive rolls on the pants. I think that helps, especially when you're fighting enemies that are over leveled. And because you're a DOT build, you can take something like damage reduction from enemies that are affected by Shadow DOT. You can take that in conjunction with just general armor or general damage reduction. That's pretty nice. For the boots, I just took something that looked pretty good. The Fortify gen does help because one of your Paragon nodes fortifies you when you pick up a Blood Orb. Movement speed also helps because Necro is a pretty slow class in general. Dodge chance and intelligence. Intelligence adds to your skill damage, so that's always good for you because you cannot crit with DOTs, so you just want skill damage. As for the aspect, I'm running Aspect of the Void. So it turns Blight into kind of this pseudo CC that pulls. So it interrupts things like if enemies have a long wind-up skill, or that's a stupid ball mob that likes to charge you from across the map. If you hit them with Blight, it does interrupt. So I like the utility of it, and it just helps group a lot of enemies into Blight's pool, which it drops a pool of DOT under them as well. So for the weapon, I think this is one of the key aspects of this build. You just basically what it means is after you deal enough DOT, you gain a huge increase in damage. So my roll is 184%. I'm trying to get something over 200%, hopefully 240. This adds a lot of damage. Like when you proc this and you look at your attack power, it goes. My attack power scales to like 30 something K after I proc all my buffs and all that. As for the lines, you want standard damage lines. I've got damage to stun enemies. That one's a little bit RNG because you do have nodes in your tree that stun enemies. You get stunned from the glove as well, but it's all lucky hit chance. I think maybe if you get damage to slowed enemies, it might be better, but I don't know how high the percentage scale. So whatever you roll with. The other stuff, damage over time, damage to CC, and intelligence adding to your skill damage. So for the amulet, I'm using Aspect of the Dam. This is, I think, one of the other key aspects of this build, because basically when you double curse an enemy, they take increased 50-something% damage. This is why you want it on the amulet as well. And this is why I'm running both Decrep and Iron Maiden. For my accessories in general, I just run damage lines. I think damage lines are nice. For the amulet, you want cooldown reduction as well. I like cooldown reduction. I like spamming my skills. So the Gloom passive is pretty good. The Gloom passive basically increases your shadow damage. I think it stacks up to 3 times for a max of 36%, so that's pretty good. For the rings, I'm using Ultimate Shadow on one, and I'm using Fast Blood on the other. So Ultimate Shadow just basically allows you to use any ultimate, well no, not any ultimate, not the minion one, but Blood Wave and Bone Storm as shadow skills, so you can slot them on your bar. I personally prefer Blood Wave, so yeah, because it leaves a area of DOT on the floor as well to add onto your other DOTs. Standard damage lines. And this ring, Fast Blood, it just reduces the cooldown of your ultimate when you pick up Blood Orbs, so that's pretty nice. I've got damage lines on these as well, but I rerolled the line. I wanted to get a damage line, but I rerolled a lot. I didn't get a damage line, but a maximum life is really, really helpful because, again, when you fight tankier mobs, you just want more life. So that's pretty much it for equipment. You could try some other aspects as well. You could try maybe a Bone Storm build there and use the aspect that gives you shield for survivability, but I haven't really had a chance to swap it around. So this is the only other aspect I've tried, I think, but it's pretty good. Now moving on to skills, Iron Maiden. I don't think the active of the skill really does anything. You don't want to be taking direct damage, especially if you're fighting high level enemies. You know, they're just gonna one shot you. So it's really just there for the essence gen, because when you cast it on a huge group of mobs, you get the essence back. It also heals you when you kill them under this effect. But mostly it's just there because when you use it in conjunction with Decrepify, it procs that aspect of the damned. For Decrepify, however, Decrepify is a really good spell because it slows enemies and it reduces the damage that they deal. So ranks of this will increase the slow and increase the damage reduction, and it's really good. And you can see that the modifiers are all to do with lucky hit. So the important one really is the lucky hit that decreases your cooldown, especially if you're running a dungeon that has high density mobs. You know, you just want to Decrepify everybody, run through them, use your skills, and hopefully you'll get them back. Corpse Explosion is of course the core of this build. You know, you're going to be using the Miasma modifier, and you just want to turn the entire map black basically. You don't want to be able to see anything, and you just turn the entire map into this poisonous fog that kills everything within it. Blood Mist is another key aspect of this build. I made this build because I like playing really YOLO and really stupid, and I die a lot. So spamming a skill that makes you immune is really, really nice. And also, like I said before, you don't want to be standing there just casting corpse explosion over and over and over. So you just run through a bunch of corpses with the aspect and you're going to proc them all. So for the ultimate, you could use Blood Wave or you could use Bone Storm. I personally prefer Blood Wave a lot. I've tried Bone Storm, but I like Blood Wave because it has a huge AoE. Like, you could group a bunch of mobs and run to a corner, and if you cast Blood Wave, it'll hit mobs that are even off the map, and it just leave this huge area that does DOT damage on the floor. It slows as well, and it pushes people back, pushes enemies back, so it's kind of a pseudo CC as well. And I just prefer this. For Blight, like I said before, it also drops a pool of DOT. When you cast it on enemies, it also has the pseudo CC and pool, which is nice for grouping enemies. And it also has a debuff that increases your damage dealt by 15%, so that's pretty nice. Now for the skill tree, I'm gonna put a link to the entire build on default builds, probably down below, so I'm not gonna go through every single node. This is just a general skill tree and the skills that I'm using. And this is how it looks like. I think Paragons are a little bit more important. I haven't really put much thought into the nitty-gritty of Paragons, so I'm just going to go through the different glyphs that I'm using. I'm using Darkness, which increases your shadow damage. I'm using Control, which increases damage to CC units, and you're going to be dealing a lot of CC anyway with the Decrepify and your lucky hits, so this is pretty nice. And as for the legendary, I'm using Flesh Eater. I think probably all Necromancers want to be using this. It's just a lot of damage and you're going to be consuming corpses anyway. So the next glyph on the next board that I'm using is Blood Drinker. I think, again, this is another general glyph that a lot of Necromancer builds use for defensive purposes, because you're going to be generating blood orbs. This build, when you consume corpses, you're going to be generating blood orbs. So it's going to fortify you, and that's pretty nice. The bonus to magic nodes is pretty nice with this board, because you get shadow damage and all that. The legendary node, I'm not too sure what to feel about it. I have tried it. I don't think it added a lot to my damage though, which is why I skipped it and just went for the glyph instead. As for the paths to get to the glyphs, I think you could probably do a better job than me. I didn't really optimize it. Like, I don't know if I need potion healing. Or maybe this is better, but yeah, I didn't really put much thought into the nodes that aren't the major nodes, so that's why I'm not really going through them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so I've just popped into a nightmare dungeon to show you the rotation. This is, I wouldn't say low tier, but it's kind of level appropriate, I guess. I think with this build, you could probably farm level 30 stuff and above quite reliably from maybe level 70 plus onwards. I think you could do level 30 at level 70. It depends. Maybe if you don't have the Paragon node that fortifies you, you can't, just because they one-shot you, but if you spec more defensively, maybe you could. But either way, so the general rotation is when you run into a bunch of mobs, ideally you want it to be a big group. You want to group them up, you want to double curse them, you want to wave them or blight them, and then you're just going to want to run through them with your blood mist. So I'm just going to try to group the mobs here, see if I can group up some more, just to show you. And these guys do hurt a bit though. I don't like doing these dungeons on high tiers because they just one-shot you. But at this level it should be fine. So yeah, just double curse, wave, and then you run through them. And yeah, they should die. So those are mostly just trash mobs, but let's see if we can find an elite with, a bunch of mobs around them. That would be nice, because this is a mobbing build. You deal more damage the more mobs you have surrounding the elites. That's okay, we can clear this first. So if you don't have Blood Wave up, just double curse, run through them, and they should die. And I forgot about the aspect that explodes them on death. This is why I like Blood Mist, because I am not a very good player. And I like spamming the invul. Okay, so there's a bandit sentry here. Hopefully there's mobs around him. Okay, there is. So Yep, you just want to double curse and then you can run through them. As you can see, Blood Mist really helps with the invul of this build. Let me just get into a better position. Alright, so there you go. Wave. And then just run through them with Blood Mist. Double curse again. Keep the DOTs up and they should be dead. And don't run into explosions. So yeah, obviously when doing the dungeon yourself, you don't have to try and specifically group them up like I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get a nice big mob so that I can kind of showcase the rotations that you could maybe go through. But okay, so there's another boss here. So he's alone this time, so this kind of sucks. But basically it's the same thing. You want to double curse. This is one of those things that I was talking about. It's a really mobile boss that doesn't really have a lot of mobs around him. But it's still the same. You want to double curse and you want to stack DOTs on him. And you should be able to kill him. So double curse, Blight, you know, run through him with Blood Mist or drop your ult if you have it. And then just proc the corpses. Okay, let's try dragging them all over to the boss to make it easier. So with the fear lines, you can cast Blood Mist when feared, which is nice. And as you can see, the boss is almost dead. It should be dead. So these are just trash mobs, they should die fast. Just double curse and the elites have spawned, so double curse, drop your blood wave, and there you go. Oh, there's one guy left. So again, if they're alone, doesn't matter. Double curse, send the corpses to him, drop your blight. And it's still good. It's not as fast as if you have a lot of mobs, but you know, that's just the nature of the build. Okay, so we got a lot of mobs here. Decrep the slow. Just, you know, make sure you have that stuff up. Again, you don't really need to group them up like this. I just want to do it to show the rotations, but usually when I'm running into a dungeon, I just curse whatever I see, and it is a little bit more efficient if you group them up, but it doesn't really matter. You know, if you're running into a large group, you can just... You don't have to draw like... You don't have to aggro everything on the map and bring it to the boss to kill them, that's what I'm saying. That's just faster if you do this. Of course, you can decrep, and then... There you go, with the Iron Coffin, you can see how much essence you get back if you just hit a brand new group of enemies. So... An elite should spawn, right? Oh, there he is. There you go. Miasma, and dead. So... Yeah, the skeletal construct is... Oh, never mind, they spawn. I was gonna say it was mostly alone, but they all spawn, so double curse, run through them. And there you go, it's done.
resistance.